Breaking the Wall of Water Relations. Amber Abrams. Museum of Watery Relations, Watermap, South Africa.
Thank you. Have you ever thought about a glass of water, beyond turning on the tap? Who makes the decisions? Who's involved in getting the water to you? Someone once explained to me that water has not always come through the taps. He said, it used to be that we would gather water from the rivers or collect it from the rains. These days, the water does not have all the nutrients it used to. Before the taps, the water would move through the soil. It would filter through and pick up important things for us to be healthy. Now, with the taps, people are sick more. Another much younger resident in the same place told me water is like medicine. Often, we take water for granted. But in 2018, Cape Town faced day zero, the day the city's taps would run dry. This forced people to think differently about water. While local governments position water users as customers, the stories I just shared highlight the reality that people relate to water in a wide variety of ways. And water is tricky in its relations. It's impossible to live without, but can be really difficult to live among. There are 2 global networks of water museums, but there is a lack of African representation in these networks. So we created the Water Map, where not just the substance, but the relations and representation matter. During Cape Town's water crisis, much discussion emerged around the value and evaluations of water. Yet water management too often centered on technical approaches to command and control water users and uses. Other ways of knowing, valuing, and relating with water need to be taken seriously, particularly as climate concerns increase. A focus on people's relations with water is critical. Local ecological knowledge is important. Our solution was to focus on watery relations, to engage local residents and learners of all ages through workshops, interactive exhibitions, short courses, and other public arts-based approaches. To share our research, but also to generate materials and discussions that allow citizens to think about their watery relations, to share their water stories and inspire people to talk more about these vital relations. Prior to COVID, we did workshops at museums, at schools, and during COVID, we developed an online space, the MAP, where people's watery relations can be publicly available for further engagement. Noting that there was very little representation from Africa in the global efforts to develop water museums, we contribute to this effort, but we make it our own and redefine it, focusing not just on sources and substances, but relations, to contribute African stories and perspectives to the world conversations around water, to share our water stories, and to have a wide variety of African voices and values around water heard. We have begun again to host interactive exhibits since COVID, public water mapping projects, and other workshops, and to make spaces to create watery submissions, all with the aim of getting people to think and talk about their relations with water and around water. We work to create discussions and spaces to consider watery relations in person and online through our interactive map, through workshops that focus on water rights, water quality, water literacy, and our relations with waterways near our homes. We try to inspire, collaborate, and imagine sustainable, just water futures by asking willing participants to submit their water samples, arts, personal perspectives, and stories to the Water Map and Museum of Watery Relations. We can create more discussion, gather information on water access, map how and why certain water sources are preferred, and maybe even come up with better ways to manage and protect such spaces. The project's impact is most obvious through its ability to engage a wide stakeholder network to develop robust discussions and understanding of local values and evaluations of water sources beyond the commonly accepted opinions of experts. Here you can see the map has begun to add Southern African stories that can contribute to this World Water Museum's network. Sometimes in life, it's the most obvious things that we take for granted. Cape Town's drought made us think differently about water. Only once we gather stories, reflect on, and think about our relations with things like water, that we can give people the tools and time to focus and think about the things that matter, the things that give vitality. That's when people start to think more carefully. After all, aside from a bit of other stuff, we are all water. And as the youngsters I work with have told me, water is life, and water is home.
Thank you so much. Let's see if we have questions. Monica. I'm shaking.
Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're engaging or how you're incorporating traditional ecological knowledge, and how is what you're doing translating into water action?
Sure. So the perspective we're working from is that people they're experts in their own lives, in their own experiences around water, and that water decision making often is done top down. So we're starting to try to generate conversations using a bottom-up approach and getting citizens to have the language to be able to discuss with water decision makers, to be able to engage with water decision makers. And in collecting water stories, we also are hoping to pinpoint places where water decision makers need to put more attention as well. So the local ecological knowledge aspects are very much important to building a better understanding and a more just water future when the policymakers get to make the decisions.
And we have a question there.
Hi, if I understood the map correctly, the lack of the Watery Museum in Africa was quite stark. I'm curious, is there hope in the future? Is there something in the pipeline where we can see that map populated?
So, ironically, we started this in late 2019, and the aim was to do many public engagements, and we had to move online. About a year ago, a university at Burkina Faso also joined the Water Museum Network, and we've actually yet to join the network because we're still formalizing our process. But I think there is hope, and the aim is, while we're very local to Cape Town at the moment, the aim is to have other people, you guys in the audience, join us. Hopefully there are other Africans in the audience who'd be keen to start gathering similar stories and populate the map. Our map does have the space to populate for all of Africa, but we wouldn't want to necessarily have that as ours. We'd welcome others to join us.
And a question there.
Thank you for that. I just want to find out, there's a contested space in science and policy in Western Cape, and one of the projects is around working for water, an alien invasive species. How do you engage with that space in your project, this Watery project?
So the Working for Water space is an EPWP project. It's a community works project, and it's run through the government. And that is very much a top-down process that allows citizens to have small amounts of income to work and learn a bit. Our process is very much trying to speak to what do people already know in those spaces without the top-down approach coming and telling people what to do. And our aim is to be able to map people's appreciation of specific sources so that attention and funding can go to those spaces as opposed to some government official making the decisions about where those spaces go or where the money goes.
14 seconds. So I think we just let it go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.